Today's session is all about leveraging platform capabilities for a smoother upgrade. This safe harbor notice is here just to let you know that some of this presentation may contain forward-looking statements and to not make any purchase decisions based on those forward-looking statements. My name is Shmael Al-Dassari, and I support our customers with upgrades here at ServiceNow. And I'm joined virtually by Adam Stout, Director of Outbound Product Management. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we kick off. There will be time at the end of today's presentation for Q&A, so do keep your questions coming along the way. You can use the Q&A function right at the bottom of your screen. Today's session will be recorded and shared on the ServiceNow community after the session in case you want to go look back at the recording or grab any resources or links. And after the session, you will be prompted to fill out a short survey in your browser. We really do appreciate the feedback. Let us know what you thought about today's session. If you have any suggestions for future event topics, we'd love to hear those as well. All right, so today's session is all about leveraging platform capabilities for a smoother upgrade. I'll start by reviewing the ServiceNow upgrade policy and the value of staying current. We will discuss platform capabilities such as ATF, Instant Scan, and Upgrade Center. Adam has some really awesome demos planned for us today. We will also discuss some new features within our Platform Tokyo release. And today you'll walk away with links to essential resources that can help with your next upgrade. And don't worry, because we have saved time at the end of the day for live Q&A. As I mentioned before, use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to ask questions along the way. If you've been on a session with me before, you know that I love the poll question. So I've got a poll for you today. What release version are you on? You should see it pop up on your screen. Are you on Quebec, Rome, San Diego? Maybe you've already upgraded to Tokyo. All right, thanks for filling that out, folks. So it looks like most of our audience today is on San Diego. We've got some folks on Rome and Quebec as well. So the session will definitely be very valuable, as I'm sure you are planning an upgrade soon. And before going any further, let's quickly review the ServiceNow upgrade policy. ServiceNow customers need to be on one of the two most current releases to be on a supported version. Here, support means access to world-class technical help 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This help also includes support with patches and hotfixes. It also means that customers will need to upgrade at least once a year to stay current. So today, the most current releases are Tokyo, which is referred to here as N, and San Diego, which is referred to as N-1. So looking at this chart below are customers with N-1 entitlement on Rome or earlier, or customers with N-2 entitlement on Quebec or earlier were due for an upgrade to Tokyo last month, or I guess now it's officially November, 2 months ago. And for our customers with N-2 entitlement on the Rome release or N-1 entitlement on San Diego or earlier, you are due for an upgrade in March of next year. So if you're unsure about your support entitlement, you can find this information on the Now Support portal or by reaching out to your SC. Got another poll here for you. Should pop up on your screen. Are you planning to upgrade to the Tokyo release? Yes, not sure, no. We've already upgraded to Tokyo, or are you in the progress of upgrading to Tokyo? Thank you for filling out this survey, appreciate it. Give folks just a couple more seconds here. Awesome. So it looks like most folks are either in the progress of upgrading, or they're planning to upgrade, or they're not quite sure yet if they're planning to upgrade to the Tokyo release. And so customers get the best out of ServiceNow when they upgrade to the latest release. Not only will you receive the latest in platform and security enhancements, but also be able to access the new products, applications, and features that come with the new release. And customers who upgrade regularly will also be able to use a supported version of the software. For more information on your support entitlement, visit the Impact Resource Center. Last poll for you today. Should be on your screen now. When are you planning to perform your next upgrade? Are you in the process of upgrading? Are you planning an upgrade in the next 2 months, in the next 2 to 4 months, 4 to 6 months, next 6 months? Or are you not sure yet? Really appreciate the feedback here. Thanks, folks. Looks like everyone got a chance to respond. All right, we've got some folks who are unsure of when their next upgrade is, and most everyone is planning an upgrade within the next 2 to 6 months. That's great. So a lot of this content today will be very valuable as you're starting to plan for your next upgrade. And now I'll pass it on to Adam to walk through the platform capabilities that can help with your upgrade.
All right, ATF. We're on ATF. Let's get going. So we're going to start out with some basics about ATF. And I call it ATF. I apologize. It is the Automated Test Framework. And you're going to hear me call it ATF all the time. So ATF is built into the platform. It's a free entitlement. Everybody has it. And what it allows us to do is to run automated tests in the platform. Since it's built in the platform, it has some advantages that a third-party product wouldn't have. We want to make sure that we're able to take advantage of those things. When do we use ATF? Why do we use ATF? So a few things that it does really well. One is the functional testing of business logic. So this allows us to test what we're trying to do. That we're able to test business rules or flows to test the outcomes we're trying to achieve. Really, really good in browser compatibility testing. What it allows you to do is to spin up a browser, go to your instance and say, run my automated test. And it's going to run using your browser, which is awesome if I need to use Firefox or Safari or Edge or Opera, whatever it is you need to use with whatever plugins and security configuration you need to use. We will run in your browser all the automated tests. So you don't have to sit there and click on everything to do what needs to go on. We're able to define the tests. Here's the things we want to watch. I launch my browser and hit go. And then finally, the area we really focus on with ATF, and we have some great stuff in Tokyo to help with this as well, is regression testing. And in regression testing, we're not looking necessarily for it's broken or not broken, but what ATF is going to help us find is there's a change in behavior. We're going to focus in on change in behavior to understand this is different before and after my upgrade. And then we have to decide, does the test need to be updated because this is a desired behavior change, or is there something wrong in my code and I need to update my code because I did not desire an update change, a behavior change? Again, regression testing helps us understand, does it work the same as it did before? And then it's going to be up to you to decide, is that what I want or not? A couple key things we want to think about when we build ATF tests. One, make a plan. And this means lots of different things. When we're looking through our upgrade, we want to make a plan. Shmaila and I have done some other webinars where we really focus in on the upgrade plan itself. But in terms of ATF, what we need to understand is our test plan. How detailed do we want the test to be? What do we want to cover? Very important, not on the technical side, but who's going to maintain the tests? Like I said, we're going to find differences in behavior, ideally very minimal, but there will always be some because as the platform changes, as you change your code, the behavior changes. Again, some are desired, some aren't, but you need to make sure you know who is going to make the decision of, is this a desired behavior or not? And if it's not, who's going to update the test? Who's going to update the code? If it is a desired behavior, who's going to update the test? So I want you to make sure you think about who's going to maintain the test, who's going to decide. You don't want to wait until the test finds an issue before you figure out who's going to address it. Plan. Next, we have test for outcomes. When we are creating tests, we don't need to test every widget along the way. We test all the basic things. Do the form fields work? Does it display correctly? If I put a value in, does it save the value? All the basic stuff that we would have in a normal application, a normal platform, we of course test as part of ServiceNow. What you need to test are the outcomes you're trying to achieve. So if I have a flow and I have these inputs and I'm expecting this output, That's what you need to test, is the output, the outcome of what you get. Does it get assigned correctly? Does it prevent saving if this happens? You don't need to test every little step along the way. That just creates extra overhead for us with very, very little return on it. Very related to that is going to be keeping it simple. Again, we want to test what we need to test and not test other stuff. Just because we can test it doesn't mean we need to test it or we want to test it. We want to make sure that when we run a test in the platform, it's going to say pass or fail. If it fails, we're able to quickly identify what's different, what failed, where it failed. ATF will show us those test steps that failed, but what does it mean? How did it fail? You want to make sure we're designing the test so that when it fails, I know who I need to talk to and who's going to look at it. If I have an overly complex test that tests many, many different things, it sounds good, but when it breaks, who do I call, right? What do I do? That goes back to making it a plan. We want to make sure that when it fails, I know who I'm going to call, who's going to be able to make a decision quickly so that my upgrade time doesn't get delayed. And the last one I put on here is execution time. We do a lot of stuff in ATF with the UI, and you can interact through the UI, and that's fine. If that's what we're testing, then we definitely want to use those UI steps. Our users use the UI. But if we're doing setup or we're trying to go through a couple quick things, we want to make sure we're using server-side steps where we can to save time. The UI takes longer in general because the data has to move to the browser. It's got to render. It's got to get all processed. The JavaScript needs to be run. There's just a lot of extra stuff, and we have to wait for it to happen. If I can do it on the server side, it's going to be a lot faster. And the faster it is, the more tests I can run. It's all generally going to be better. So make sure we're aware of what needs to be done in the UI, what can be done on the server side, so that I can optimize the server side, optimize for performance time. I can run more tests. I can run more simpler tests that are testing all the different outcomes I'm looking for. And then again, I have my plan. We cannot skip the plan part. All right. And a little bit of background on how ATF works is one of the things that is really important to understand is this general structure of ATF. And that is that we have test suites, and test suites, we can have test suites in test suites. So at some point I can have a suite for an entire application. I can have my upgrade suite, which has everything that I want to run at it. At the lower level, we have tests, and tests are meant to be atomic units. So I have things like we have different test steps that come into it, like creating a user. If I'm using a third-party tool, I have to understand what creating a user is. We have an out-of-the-box test step, which allows me to create a user, which simply says, I want a user with this name, and I want it to have this role. I want it to be in these groups. Create it. So even a checkbox to say impersonate. We can reuse some data, and there's some times where we want to do that to just say, pick a user that has this role. But in a lot of things we want to do in the effort to be simple, we're actually going to create a new user for every test I'm going to run. And I'm going to give it just the specific role I'm testing. So that way I don't have to worry about a user changing jobs, which now they have different roles, or there's some weird role combination. We don't have to worry about it. We're going to create users. Again, very simple configuration. We're going to put an ATF. It's going to create the user, impersonate it. Then it's going to do things. It's going to open up a service portal. It's going to submit a catalog item. Whatever thing we need to do in the platform, ATF can do. It's going to run through all those test steps. And then at the end, it's going to unimpersonate. It's going to go back to the normal user, to the user that's running the test. It's going to do all those things. Inside of the tests, they're atomic units. They do not share data between them. But inside of a test, you can I create a user, pass to the test step what the username is, so I can create a record on that user's behalf or as that user. Inside, we can share data, but the tests are atomic, and that allows us to parallelize some things in different ways, or just be able to run one at a time and have it work. The really key thing that I want to bring back is at the bottom of this, which is rollback. So because this is built into the platform, we understand what happened during the test, and we're able to roll it all back. So a few exceptions to this, but generally, whatever you do, if I create a user, I create an incident, I escalate the incident, I create a CI to be part of the incident, it will undo all of those things, so that I can run the same test again, and I'm never hitting the residual effects of what happened before. So really, really powerful to help us. If parallelism can still cause some issues, some tests can be run in parallel, some can't, but generally we can run the same test over and over again, fix something, run it again, fix something, run it again, and we never have to worry about reading results from a previous run. It's going to undo everything and roll it back, and then it's going to save the results so that we can see what's going on. We can make sure that everything looked good, and if there are any issues, we'll see what those issues are. A nice feature as well is that for the UI test, it'll take screenshots as it's going when there's any errors so that we can see what happened, even though we've rolled back all those records. All right, you got a very, very quick intro into the automated test framework. If you have more questions about this, we run a Platform Academy session every other week, and we've done 3 or 4 sessions on ATF in the last year or so. I think we have another one coming up in a couple more weeks. Lots of great content that will talk about different things dealing with ATF. Outside of that, there is awesome in-depth training on Now Learning, so I encourage you to do that. If you're going to be writing any tests, you definitely want to take the training. If you just want to learn a little bit more about it, how to come up with a plan and what kind of tests I want to write, the Platform Academy sessions and the archives from those are incredibly valuable for you. All right, next I want to talk about one of the enhancements we got in Tokyo, or with Tokyo. This is actually supposed to come out in the next few days. Very soon, the ATF Test Generation and Cloud Runner. ATF Test Generation and Cloud Runner, very creative names because they generate tests and they allow us to run those tests in the cloud. And these are actually a little bit disconnected. It's the same app in the store that you'll need to install, but the Cloud Runner runs all ATF tests, not just the test generated ones, the ATF test generated ones. And the test generation doesn't have to be run in the cloud. You can run that like normal as well. We'll see this in a demo in just a second. But what this allows us to do is to accelerate our testing because I can create tests faster than ever before. Before this, we had quick start tests, which were predefined tests. There's 600 or 700 of those spanning the platform, testing different things. You were able to take one of the quick start tests, modify it the way you needed to, and then you based on your customizations and your configuration, and then you could run those tests. Now what we're able to do is, we have the test generator ones. You also had with the quick start ones, you also had the ability to write your own from scratch, which was needed if you were doing any custom development, or you just had a new workflow that was not covered in one of the quick start tests. With test generation, we're able to point some AI at your instance, at your data, and it will fingerprint what your data looks like, run a bunch of tests to recreate that data, and then save those tests so that we get a wide fingerprint of what works on my instance. What are the current behaviors? Again, this goes back to the regression tests. It fingerprints what it does today. And then we're actually going to jump to the next slide. We fingerprint what we do today. We upgrade our instance, and then we're able to run those same tests to identify any changes in behavior. It will not say whether that is good or bad, but it'll tell you there is a change in behavior, and then you need to look at it. Again, when I upgrade, there are changes in behavior that I want. That's why I'm upgrading. We fixed an issue or we enhanced a process. And there's changes in behavior that I don't want, and I need to go fix it because it doesn't work the way it's supposed to. In the past, we wouldn't have been able to cover this space in quick start tests. You would have had to create all these tests manually. They're very time consuming to create. They're very time consuming to maintain. What we're able to do now, when I want to create an upgrade, I create all my tests, I upgrade, I run my tests. When I'm going to do my next upgrade, I'm going to throw my other ones away. I'm going to create new tests that are based off of the data that are on my instance right now, and that identify how it works today. Because there's virtually no cost to create them, we just have to wait for them to create. I don't have to pay somebody to create all these tests. There's no problem with throwing them out when they get stale. They will get stale as my data changes because these tests are looking at my data. So right around my upgrade time, I'm going to create new tests, upgrade, run those tests. I can keep those tests for a little bit, but then after that, I'm going to throw them out and regenerate them because all I have to do is press a button to regenerate it. And seeing is believing. So we're going to go hop into a demo real quick. And we are going to cover both test generations, what I've been talking about today, and Cloud Runner and how we run that. And a question came in about ATF. ATF has been around 5 or 6 years. It might have been Geneva or Helsinki when it came out, maybe before then. So everybody who's supported, every instance now out there has ATF. It does get improvements. Every release, things get improved. And in this case, it's pretty major. But okay, so we're going to switch over to the demo. Okay, I should be sharing my browser. So if you don't see that, then let me know. It looks good. All right, so I am in ATF. You'll see lots and lots of options in ATF. And again, that's why I do recommend that you take a look through the Academy sessions. They'll walk you through some of these things, and then the training. Lots and lots of great training about how to run ATF, how to create tests. A lot more detail than we can talk about in a couple minutes. Today, we're going to be talking about test generation, the new stuff. So I'm going to come down. The first thing I'm going to do is select my cloud user. So both the Cloud Runner and Test Generation use the ServiceNow servers, but not on your instance. And one of the things we need to do is to tell the configuration, we're going to generate tests. Which user do we want to impersonate to generate the tests? This is who has access to the data. So I'm generally going to pick sysadmin. You'll notice I don't put a password in here. We don't need a password. There's not a security issue in here. But we need to know which user do we want to impersonate who can see the data. Generally, sysadmin is going to be good, but if I'm generating data that sysadmin can't see, because we need to analyze the data, you need to tell us which user you want to have, and then you may need to change this depending which test you're generating. So I pick sysadmin. That's already who I have, so I don't need to resubmit this, but I just need to make sure that that user has access to the data I want to generate. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty simple testing. If you have no data, we have no tests. Okay, now we're going to generate tests. I'm going to go to Test Generator. When I go to the Test Generator, this is one of my favorite demos. It's incredibly boring. I apologize for that, but this is the form. All we have to do is press submit, and I will generate tests. We're going to go through a couple of the options, but that's all I have to do. The first thing is email, and I want to point this out. Generally on a subprod, and we're going to be running this, we're always going to be generating tests on a subprod. In a subprod, we generally have email turned off. It's either going nowhere or it's going to some static account. All the emails go one place. This bypasses that because we know this is only used on a subprod, and because we want to get this email, this is going to be some other email address that this uses a different system so that it will go out even if email is turned off on this instance. So really important to have. The next thing we have in here is advanced. You don't need to click advanced, but the options that are here are: one, which tables do we want to generate tests for? Default is all tables. You can also specify a specific table if I want to test just a specific table, and then a couple options. I want less than 10,000 tests. Seems like a reasonable number, and no more than 50 tests per table. Again, it's going to look at your data and it's going to generate the different permutations that it has. These are the defaults that are in there. They're reasonable to go with, but you can control them if you want. That's it. That's it. And then all we're going to do is press submit. I'm actually not going to press submit right now because I pressed it this morning. Generating tests does need to analyze your data. It is not instantaneous. It can take a few hours. It might run overnight. It might even take a couple of days, depending on how much data you have. So make sure that when you are planning your upgrade, you do plan to generate those tests maybe a few days before, maybe the weekend before. We'll just kick it off on the subprod to generate those tests so that I can run it while I'm working on my upgrade. Don't wait till the last minute because it does take a little bit of time. I'm going to go click on more information. It's going to show me what's running. I have a few jobs that are running right now to create more tests. In this case, I kicked this off earlier and we're 33% done, but it's going to be generating those tests as we're going. The overhead that it's looking at, we are looking at your data. It's a bit throttled, so you're most likely not going to notice any impact that it's going on, but it is working on this instance. If your subprod is busy for a lot of other things, this is just running a couple jobs in the background. You should be able to continue doing work, but understand that it is working on your system. Okay, so this is running. It's been a day. I now have my tests. What tests did I create? I'm going to go look at my test suites, and what we're going to see are some test suites, or test suite that's created that is ATF generated suite. That all of them that they're created are there. And I will answer some questions about availability of all this once we wrap up the demo here. So it created a test suite for me called ATF generated suite. It's very creative. And then these are the tests. So on my demo instance with very little data and just Z-booted demo instance, it generated 86 tests for me. Looks like one per table. And that's because it's a very boring data set. You're going to see more. Again, we put those thresholds in there so it doesn't generate too much, but it's looking at the most common data in your instance. It's looking at the data in those tables to generate what's going on. When I go look at one of these, we're going to go click on this, one of these tests. One of the things I talked about earlier was keeping it simple, not testing everything. Well, that's true because I don't want you to spend your time creating a bunch of tests and going through. Because these are generated by a computer and we're going to throw them away, we're not going to have to maintain them. We're just going to create them, use them, and throw them away. I don't care how detailed it is. Detailed is okay. So in this case, what we're seeing is that it is impersonating a user. It's not going to create a user as part of the test because we're looking at real data. So there is a real user to use. It's going to impersonate that user, open a form, set some fields. validate that they're there, set some fields, validate they're there, save it. It's going to submit it, record, check that the record was saved. It's going to do all these things. Again, fingerprinting what works today to get the data that's in there. When it generates the test, it goes through lots of different permutations, looking at your data. It creates the tests, and then they do have to pass. They do have to work. And then it's only going to save the ones that work. So if it can't actually recreate the data that you have in your data because there's something else going on, it won't save those ones. It's going to save the things that it can recreate and it knows do work. That way, when you upgrade, because it worked before, it needs to work again. So we've created those things. Now let's get to the Cloud Runner part of this. So when I get to the Cloud Runner, well, before Cloud Runner, if I want to run this, I click on Run Tests. And I have Start New Test Runner. So Test Runner, still important. There's still things that we're going to use. These allow us to run in the browser configuration that you have. So if I need to run in Safari, I can run Safari. If I need to run Chrome with a very, very specific set of extensions turned on, I can run that with the new Test Runner and spin it up. And if I do that, well, we're going to keep talking. I'm going to go ahead and run this test. I didn't have a Test Runner spun up, so it's going to spin up a new browser on my computer. A note, I can't really do anything else with this instance right now while this is running because it's impersonating sysadmin. I wasn't logged in as sysadmin. It impersonated sysadmin. It's currently running as sysadmin, and it's going to go through those tests. It's going to set the fields, validate that they're, run through everything it needs to run. Again, if I need to do browser compatibility testing, I need to do this. This is still valuable, but I don't really want to sit here and do that. If we come back, we're actually seeing it run in the background. So this instance, we spin up the test runner, is now communicating directly with the instance, going back and forth, and we'll check the progress here. Cloud Runner allows me to say, don't run this on my instance, run it in ServiceNow's cloud. So it's going to run to ServiceNow's cloud. Now, I believe that's running Chrome, so it's not great browser compatibility tests. It's not using your plugins. It's not using your security stuff. We're using pretty default browsers to make sure things work. That's going to cover a lot of your key use cases, but not all your browser compatibility use cases that you might need to cover. So in this case, it's running. And again, it's running. You were seeing it type those values in. If you see the screen blink, that's because it's taking screenshots along the way. Again, really useful part of ATF, but not super useful for me right now. I don't actually want to sit here and run while this works. Since I fired this off, we are going to wait, and I'm going to answer a couple questions while we see it complete. A couple of the questions that came in, is the Cloud Runner available in the store now? No, it's not available in the store now. It will be, it's planned to be released in the November release, which is on Thursday in 2 days. So check back then. It does require Tokyo. There's some enhancements to the platform to make this work. It is a store app, but it requires Tokyo to work. So this is not going to help you upgrade to Tokyo, but it's going to help you upgrade past Tokyo, going to Utah, going to patch releases, or any custom deploys you have along the way. Okay, yeah, this is only available in Tokyo, and it is not available in GCC yet. This is available for the commercial customers, but not in GCC because it does use some shared stuff that we are planning to get it run in there, but there will be a delay to get it available to GCC. You can still run everything with your the test runner with your normal test runner for ATF. You can still use ATF in test runner in GCC or any of the regulated markets, but you can't run it. You can't use test generation, and you can't use Cloud Runner in the regulated markets yet. So this is still running. Let's see if it gives us a quick one. Almost done. And hopefully that'll be the end of it. So we run 16 out of 16 steps. And now this test runner actually is still usable. It's just sitting here waiting for other tests, but we are done. So we can go to the result. And when I see the result, it's going to show me that we did all these steps. They were all successful. There's some logging along the way about what it did. Really useful. Again, if it failed, it would tell me where it failed, and then I'd be able to manually recreate these things to go, what's going on here? Okay, so that was using a test runner. If I want to use the Cloud Runner, I'm going to run the same thing. And we're going to go to history and go to my test. And when I go to Cloud Runner, I love boring demos. I just click Cloud Runner and click Run Test. I'm not actually configured to do a Cloud Runner, so it's going to be waiting for Cloud Runner resources to come online indefinitely, but that's all we have to do, and it will run in the background. This allows me to schedule it whenever I want to schedule it, let it run as long as I want to let it run. It's just going to go and give me the results. All I have to do is view the results. I don't have to sit here and wait. It does take time, but I am able to do all the other work that I want to do, and I can let it run overnight, just come in the morning and review my test results. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel these again because this instance isn't configured yet. And I've canceled it. All right, so we have gone over test generation and the Cloud Runner, both very boring. Make sure you're on Tokyo. Pretty soon you'll be able to get these from the store, and then you'll be able to generate tests and run them in the cloud. Very simply, no extra configuration, nothing else to support, just a couple clicks and your life is easier. All right, did we get all the questions? I think so. So we're going to go ahead and move on. All right, so we did our demo, and now let's talk about instance scan. So ATF allows us to do dynamic code analysis. We're actually running the code. We're actually executing it, making sure everything works. Instance scan takes a different approach. Instance scan allows us to do static code analysis. So why do we use instance scan? So instance scan allows us to identify issues with what we're doing or warning signs that something's a little bit off. It allows us to ensure we have best practices being enforced. We all should be doing some type of code review for any update sets we're pushing through, any apps we're going through. This allows us to codify the best practices, the code reviews that we do manually. We can just write checks for those, so it does it for us, really simplifying our time, reducing the amount of human error that can be introduced, reducing the time it takes, and making sure we have better coverage with less effort and also better quality. And then it allows us to uphold quality standards. This is how we do things here. We want to make sure it works. There's a few different types of instance scan checks that we can run. The most common one is a table check. And a table check is where we look at a table for certain conditions. And any record that has these conditions, we're going to flag it and have us come look at it. We can also run column checks, a little bit less frequent, and where we're looking for certain types. And if I'm looking at an XML field, an HTML field, I want to check all my HTML fields to make sure they don't do this, whatever that may be. The next one is script only. Table checks are the most common. Script are probably the second most, and then column checks. Script only allow us to run a script, and we can find errors however we want to find them, look for conditions that however we want to find them, and then flag those things. And then linting is standard linting for code to check the syntax of your JavaScript. They're all useful. We're going to do a demo in just a minute. We're going to write our own table check. But this allows us to check different things, different ways to find issues with the configuration itself. We're not running the code, but we're examining the code. It gives us a different way to look at the quality of our code and ensure we don't have any issues. The fewer issues we have, the easier upgrades are going to be. Just very quickly, when we look at this, the structure for instance scan is very similar to ATF, where we have suites that can have suites. The difference being that ATF has tests. We have tests that go into suites that go into suites. For instance scan, we have checks that go into suites that go into suites. So I can have a suite that just checks all my script includes, or I can have a suite that checks all my HTML fields, or I can have a suite that checks everything. Whatever makes sense is what we want to set up. And again, what this allows us to introduce is another level of quality control. So we develop them, we develop our workflows, our customizations, however we want to do that. This allows us to validate that what we configured conforms to our standards, and then we move on to testing with ATF. Very complementary between instance scan and ATF. It is not a one or the other. We want to be using both. And with that, let's go ahead and get into a quick demo. All right, so we went through ATF, and now we are over to instance scan. Out of the box, everybody should have the instance security center definitions that come through. You'll see more definitions coming through in other releases, mostly through the store. We're starting to ship them both standalone and ship them with the applications that they go with. Many of these are not application specific. So they can be, but they're not. They don't have to be application specific. We will be shipping more of these come through, but I don't want you to wait for us. If you have things that you're looking for in a code review, you can write checks to do those things today. So if we come in, this one's not modifiable. We're just going to bring one up to take a look at it because this is for Instance Security Center. Again, this is running on all your instances today. It is what powers the Instance Security Center, and you can use it to power your own analysis as well. So we're going to look at, again, lots of table checks. How about table access for all internal users? So if I look at table access for all internal users, what this is looking at, this is a complicated example, but a great example that comes through. We have a name, a simple name. What am I looking at? Category, there's a few different categories, which we'll go over when we create one of these, and a priority. So what type of issue is this and how important is this issue? We ship those for the ones we write, but you can set those as well. There are minor issues that you probably shouldn't do, but aren't going to stop things, to a major security issue where we're going to stop this right away. We're not deploying this code while we have this issue. Short description explains a little bit more about what we're talking about. The description, we really do want to describe what are we looking for and why is it a problem? And then the real resolution, how do you fix it? It's important to know how do we fix it, not just I don't like it, but don't do this instead. And documentation. So this documentation can go to ServiceNow documentation. It could go to a KB article. It could go to training. If you see this, you need to go do this training, to an internal KB, whatever makes sense. You can link to that documentation to help the person who finds this fix it. And then what we do in this is we are looking at a certain table. We're querying that table with this condition. For every row we get back, we are then going to run this script, which checks more things. And then anything that returns back in the code, we're going to say, flag this record. If I go back to a little bit more, to a simpler one, so there's a table check. I'm going to go to this other record. There's no advanced stuff. A lot of things we can look for. We don't need to run any script. In this case, we're just saying any record in this table that comes back with this condition has this issue, and we should fix it. Right. In this case, this was a moderate. The other one was a high. Lots of great information to come through, but let's go ahead and create one and run one real quick. So I'm going to come into checks and we're going to create a new check. So we're going to create new. What are we going to check for? Okay, so we have, again, those 4 types: table, column, script, and linter. Table, again, very common, very useful, very easy. All right, so we're going to check for atoms. It takes longer to come up than to write. Great. Check for atoms. A security issue, definitely a security issue. Not critical, but high. I'm going to skip the description and resolution. I shouldn't, but I will. And no documentation. Table. So the table we're going to look for is sysuser. So sysuser, and then the condition. First name is Adam. Okay, no advance. This is what we're looking at. Any Adam is a problem. And we're going to go ahead and save this. You may choose to use other things, but I'm going to go with this. And we're going to test it. So we're going to run the test check. It's going to run it. This has demo data, so there's not a lot of things to come through. But it found something. So it ran this very quickly. It's just got to run the query. If we have scripts, it's got to run the scripts too, so it can take longer. Some of these checks do take longer than other ones. In this case, very simple. And what do we find? If we go into the result, so there was only one Adam, and it has a record, it has a link to that record. That's really important because we don't want to just say you have lots of problems. We're going to go, where's the problem? Where is it? So in this case, we find that I'm the problem, and I can create a task to go, hey, let's go resolve this. I can have this run once a week. I'm going to have it run once a day, go through my suites and figure out, do we have any issues? Now, this can be for things that are a little bit more serious, that, hey, do we find bad references that have come through? If I'm doing all my work in the UI, there's a lot of protection to make sure we don't have bad data. But if I am using some APIs, if I'm loading in update sets, if I'm doing XML loads, there's chances where things get off. This allows us to find some of those things. So some cases we do want to run these in production. These are not always subprods only, but we're definitely going to run them in subprods. Some things we're going to run in prod. We're going to check for some bad data. We're going to check a lot of things in sys metadata. Again, we want to try and automate our code reviews so that all we're doing is reviewing these issues, not looking for the issues, not clicking through record and record and record. Okay, instance scans available to everybody. It's on all your instances. It's ready to go. I think we talked about what's through here. We have a finding. We have the checks that we ran. If I ran a suite, it would list the different checks. lots of great information in here. If you have more questions about this, you can also go, we have an instant scan session in the Platform Academy, and there is training as well in Now Learning. There's a question about muting. Once I find this issue, can I say, don't tell me about this one again? And I don't think that's in here right now. I know that's something that's been discussed, but I don't think we have that here today. I would have to look a little bit more. It's a great question. If you want to post it in the community, we can get you I can confirm that that it's coming in. But generally, it's going to find all the issues. And you could, if you write your own checks, you could exclude things in there if you wanted to do that. Okay, so let's get back to our deck really quickly. All right, so we have talked about ATF, we've talked about instant scan. Okay, shameless plug. So I work on all the platform, and we're talking about ATF, instant scan, and upgrade plans. Well, you want smoother upgrades? Here is a secret. We also want to make sure we're using low-code tools when we can. That means Decision Builder, Process Automation Designer, Flow Designer, Action Designer, and Automation Engine. When you write lots of code, you write lots of script includes and lots of beautiful JavaScript. It's beautiful. I appreciate it. But it does introduce risks. It's harder to test. It's harder to understand what it's doing. And it puts more of a testing burden on you because I don't know what your code does. When you use the low-code tools, we're able to test all the out-of-the-box actions. We're able to test the logging in Flow Designer, that the performance of everything that goes through. You put more of that testing burden on ServiceNow where it should be, and all you're doing is configuration. You're just putting in, I'm going to give it a username and I want you to create it. I don't have to write a script to do it. There's less for you to maintain. There's less for you to write in the first place, and there's less for you to test. It's going to be better for you in the long run, and often in the short run to take advantage of the low-code tools. We don't have time to talk about them, but make sure you know what all of these are. Decision Builder's only been around for a few releases. Process Automation Designer, a few releases before that. Flow Designer has been around for years now with Action Designer. And Automation Engine includes Integration Hub and RPA, Robotic Process Automation. So even if you don't have an API, you can still use our tools to interact with something. You really, really want to make sure you understand what's there. How do you use these things? It's going to make your upgrade easier, right? It's going to make your life easier in a lot of ways. Okay, and next, as an update in Tokyo, in the Tokyo timeframe, Decision Builder, if you haven't seen this, make sure you go see some of the Academy sessions, some of these webinars on there. A lot of great stuff in the developer advocates material in here. There's a lot of things out here. In Tokyo, we added the ability to interact, to import and export into Excel, or export and import into Excel with decisions. Decisions allow us to get rid of code that would be a big if statement, a big switch statement, and make it a table in ServiceNow. Prior to Tokyo, you had to have a table in ServiceNow, and you still do, but now you can export that to Excel. And I can now, this is one of my favorite things, give an analyst an Excel file and say, fill in all the choices. So I can have multiple inputs and multiple outputs. They can fill out a table with everything. If you get these things, I want you to get this. This is the result. If you put in A, give me B. If you put in C, give me B. If you give me E, give me D. Whatever it is, I don't care. I just know these are the inputs and these are the outputs. You give me the Excel file back. I load it back in with a push of a button. And now my flow, my decision, my process just says, make a decision. It calls your logic, your decision table, and comes out with the result. So I have less, I don't have to modify my flow just because we need to modify a few variables. It's awesome. And it allows us to empower more people in our organization. So I don't have to have a pro coder updating an if statement, updating a switch for a minor change every other week. I can just now do that with a decision. I can give that analyst the ability to do it in the platform, or we can do it in Excel if that's where they want to live. All right, next thing we're going to look at are upgrade plans. We got a couple minutes to go through this. So upgrade plans allow us to make that last mile a little bit sooner, or a little bit easier. So when I perform an upgrade, we are still going to have a larger plan about when are we going to do the upgrade, what are we going to upgrade, lots of things to do, how we're going to communicate that. But the upgrade plans are very specific in the instance. As an admin, when I go to perform an upgrade, I perform the upgrade, and then I need to review an upgrade center. What are the different things that happened? What skips are there? I want to install this. I want to do the upgrade. I want to make sure I activate these two plugins, install this app, ignore these issues, and accept these skips. I had to just document that in the change before. This is what I want to have to do. One, time consuming for me to do. I have to do it on every subprod as I go along the way. If I have 2 subprods and a prod, not a huge deal, but it still had the chance for me to get it wrong. And I will do it, right? If humans have to do it, we're going to get some things wrong. I don't want to take that risk. I don't want to take that time. Upgrade plans allow us to record that, upgrade an instance, record it, say, this is what I want to do, verify this is my plan, push it to the app repo, and then all my other instances can pull it down and apply it. So it's faster to do, less error prone. And let's just go see a quick demo of that as well. So we're going to switch over to our upgrade plans. So our upgrade plans, I'm going to come into the upgrade center. In the upgrade center, I'm going to see a module for upgrade plan. Before we do that, I want to come down. Well, let's just go to upgrade plan. So I can click on upgrade plan here, or I'm going to manage the upgrade plan. Okay. Oh, I got ruined my parade. Okay. So in the upgrade plan, the thing that I want to make sure that you, let's see if I can switch this back. I think I screwed this up. When you come into your instance, it's not going to say builder, it's going to say consumer. By default, all instances are consumers. So we talked about building a plan and then retrieving it and consuming it and applying it. That's a consumer. Again, by default, all instances are consumer. You're going to pick one subprod and make it a builder. So if I go into properties for Upgrade Center, I'm going to change it from consumer to builder one time. You can't undo this once you've built a plan. So make sure you know what you're going to do, unless if you Z-boot it, you can. If you clone over it, you can. But without a clone, once this is set as a builder, it's going to be a builder. So I've already configured it to builder. If I go into upgrade plans, what happens is I have build. If you have consume, it's going to say retrieve. So we're going to come in here. I've set it to builder. I go to my upgrade plans, and now I'm going to click build. And what this is going to do is it's going to look at what I've done since my upgrade, and it's going to assemble that into an upgrade plan. In this case, it's a very clean instance, and I didn't do anything. So building a plan is pretty quick. So now let's see if we view the details. Again, I have a demo instance, so it has a few issues. You shouldn't see these things, but I'm not connected to an app repo, which is going to cause me a problem since we need to publish these to app repos. Now I'm going to go to the upgrade plan, and my upgrade plan is blank because, again, I didn't do anything. But here we're going to see that it's going to look at what you did, but we're going to be able to say, hey, I want to activate this plugin, install this application, and it's going to go through everything that I needed to do and all the different customizations that are there. Once that's there, I'm going to publish it. Again, it's not going to work for me today, but I'm going to publish this. Shouldn't work for me today. There we go. I'm going to publish that to my app repo. There will now be an app in my app repo called Upgrade Plan Tokyo Patch 2. I can go to any of my other instances and retrieve Upgrade Plan for Tokyo Patch 2. Simple, easy, consistent, but now I have less places that I can screw it up. I can review what we're going to do, and I can rest assured it's going to happen. All right. And with that, we're going to go back to the deck real quick.
We've got just a few minutes left here, so I'll just go quickly through some resources, and the links will be in the chat, so be sure to copy and save those. And you can also check out the community post for the recording for today's session and grab any links that you might have missed. So if you haven't already got your Now Platform Tokyo Release Upgrade Kit, it's now available. The upgrade kit contains a playlist of valuable links, demos, and more to help you get everything you need to upgrade. It's available in both PDF and PowerPoint so that you can customize the presentation. And you can get the upgrade kit by visiting the Upgrade Easily page on the Customer Success Center. There should be a link in the chat for you. And today's conversation does not end here. Please do join us on the ServiceNow Releases and Upgrades community to ask questions and get answers. You can also learn about upcoming webinars and meetups, get the latest best practices, get expert resources, and connect with peers. I highly suggest you subscribe to the forum to receive notifications about popular posts and upcoming events. And pro tip, you can customize your notifications to only get notified about what matters most to you. Another thing I wanted to call out is the Now Create Upgrade methodology. You can get step-by-step guidance on upgrading your instance, and each step includes a full list of resources and assets that you can use. And if you already have a strong upgrade plan in place, we suggest cross-referencing it with the Now Create Upgrade methodology. As Adam mentioned before, we've got a bunch of events happening either through live on ServiceNow or integrated event series to support upgrades and adoption and deployment of ServiceNow products. Or there's the bi-weekly Platform Academy series. Again, the links are in the chat. I do want to call out some upcoming events that we have this month all around upgrades and what's new from ServiceNow. So we have a session next week about planning and managing your upgrades on Now Support. We also have a webinar on the 15th, which will give you a look into the November store release and all of those new features, as well as on November 17th or the 16th for our folks in APJ. We have Build a Streamlined Project Plan for Upgrade Success. So we hope to see you at a future event. The link should be in the chat to register. And we've got all these other resources that you can check out. I believe we've only got a couple minutes here. Adam, was there any questions that you wanted to answer before we log off today?
Yeah, there were a couple questions. So one, the muting. Sorry, I wasn't sure that it was in here. On any specific finding for Instant Scan, you can mute it, which will say, "Don't tell me about this again." And then you can I believe you can go unmute it. When you do mute it, it'll ask you for a reason. Muting is a bit, concerning when you go through it, because you don't want to forget something that's there. But you can mute it, and you can still review those things. It's just not going to alert you to them again. So that's important to know that you can do that if you want to, which is important for something like Instant Security Center, where you can't change the checks. For your checks, you can do whatever you want to do. For these ones, though, you can mute it to go, I don't need to know about this for some reason, which does happen. And then there was one more question. Can upgrade plans be used on monthly patches? Absolutely. Right. So everything we're talking about with ATF, Instant Scan, and upgrade plans, they're not just for major upgrades. They're for everything. Right. So whether I'm deploying a change, I have a new custom app, whether I'm doing just a minor upgrade from a patch release from the store, or adding a new app in the store, use upgrade plans, use Instant Scan, use upgrade plans, ATF, and Instant Scan. Right, they're all going to make your life easier, and the more you use them, the easier they get to use, the better your plan, the more mature it gets, and then it's going to make those family upgrades even easier. When we just look at an upgrade once a year, right, we have to upgrade once a year. If we're afraid of it and we just do it then, it's really hard. But the more you get into it about using these tools every time, your life's going to be easier. You're going to sleep a lot more soundly every night, because you know these things are going to work.
Thank you, Adam. And thank you all for being here with us today. If we didn't get a chance to get to your question, I do apologize, but feel free to ask your questions in that link that we shared in the chat that will have the recording. We'll be looking out there if there are any other follow-up questions come up. But thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Adam, for those incredible demos. Have a wonderful rest of your day.